Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me is a full team for this review. AJ, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah, good one, innit? Mozza, how you doing, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is good. This is going to be a positive show, isn't it? And Drew, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing, mate.
He's doing, yeah. Look, there's no beating about the bush on this one. We're here to review Sunday's disastrous game against Chelsea. There's a lot to moan about. There's a lot to criticise. There's a lot to critique. So we'll probably let's just brush over the game real quick before we moan about the stuff we have to moan about, because ultimately there's an awful lot that went wrong on Sunday, and I think it highlights an awful lot of problems that we have been highlighting for the last 3 or 4 months, and they really came to a head in the game. Quickly running through the first half on Saturday. It was a bit lackluster. It was a bit messy. I don't think Chelsea were particularly good on the ball. We weren't that great on the ball either. Really wasteful. We did manage, obviously, to get in the lead from Alex Iwobi, but if you ask me, his performance around him scoring that goal was really, really poor. He wasn't just tired on the ball like he has been for the last couple of months. He was just really, really poor, and on his feet poor. Um, Load of things happened near the end of the second half, but not in the first half. Sorry, but not really loads of action other than one Sanderberg diving header that he possibly could have scored from. And that's it really for Fulham, and chances for pretty much the rest of the game. The game, the tail of this game is all in the second half, and us failing to keep up with play. So everyone who's probably watching this probably would have seen the highlights of the game on Saturday. If you haven't, I don't suggest you watch them. They don't make pretty viewing, but there is plenty for us to dive into. Drew, I'm going to start with you, mate, because I know that from talking over the last couple of after today and since yesterday afternoon, you make a very valid point about an awful lot of stuff we have here and what went wrong in the game. We've been saying for months, and we'll be saying all year, Marco Silva is Fulham's biggest asset, right? We all love him. We have to caveat by whatever we're about to say now. Everyone knows that none of us four want anybody to manage Fulham other than Marco Silva, but we all have real gripes about some of the stuff that happened on Sunday, because it brings to a head about stuff we've all been moaning about for months. And with that, Drew, I'm going to leave it to you to explain how you felt about the second half of that game and Marco Silva on Sunday, because you've been making some of these points for a few months now.
Can we just rewind a second, Ash? I think,
Yeah,
as low as I disagree with you, mate, I think it's a little bit harsh about Fulham in the first half. In the first half, we had energy. The problem in the first half is that Chelsea were there for the taking. If we'd have scored like we were on top, like we did against Liverpool, we wouldn't be talking about this game as we are going to. And this is one of the recurrent themes we've talked about all season. We don't we just don't capitalize when we're on top. We don't flood the box. We don't take our chances. Chelsea were woeful in the first half. They improved in the second half, obviously due to their tactical changes, but even then they weren't great. But in the first half, you're quite right. With Berge's header, I mean, if that had gone in, I think it'd been a very different game. But going in at 1-0, everyone in the ground knew Chelsea couldn't be that bad again. Couldn't be that bad again. We saw it against Liverpool. I mean, we blew Liverpool away in the first half, but they did come back into it in the second. And at half time, Maresca made changes. Everyone knew that he had to change something. Everyone knew that there was going to be a push from Chelsea, and it got to 50 minutes, and it's very difficult to speak for the whole of the Fulham faithful, but where I sit in the Johnny Haynes stand, there was increasing disquiet that the game was getting away from us, and we were running out of steam. And this is a recurrent theme. Now, we talked about it, and for those of you that follow me on Twitter, know that this was one of my big problems with the Wolves game, if you remember, boys, when we got hammered 4-1 at home after the international break. And we came out in that game, Marco had stuck to his usual lineup, and everyone looked flat. Everyone looked flat. And again, on Sunday, 50 minutes, that's when it was quite clear that from that point on, we needed reinforcements. And I fail, and this is what I don't understand about Marco. For someone who is so good at his job, who is so obviously intelligent, at times he seems completely out of tune with where his team are in terms of their resilience, their conditioning, their strength, their energy. I just don't get it for someone who is as good as he is. When literally everyone around me where I was sitting knew that it was slipping away from us, and it wasn't because Chelsea were that great, because they weren't. And there was disquiet. I mean, Fulham Twitter after after a defeat is always a sight to behold. You've got people that think Tony Khan should be put back in charge of recruitment because Marco blew 35 million on ESR and 20 million on Berge and 28 million on Anderson. You've got other people that are quite happy for Spurs to come knocking. You've got other people who think that if you criticise anything about Fulham management substitutions, that you're anti-Marco. It's one extreme to the other. But these are valid concerns. And probably one of the, and I appreciate, I'm probably jumping ahead a couple of weeks here because we are going to do a season end review, and when we do our our summer transfer window preview. But there are some sensible Fulham fans out there. There's quite a few of them, to be fair, who are wondering if Marco's taken this squad as far as he can. Because we are seeing in my humble opinion, we are seeing the upper limits of it now. We are running into a recurrent theme of key players playing too much football, a lack of competition, and a lack of rotation. And as you have to credit Maresca for making the changes he did, but it was nothing that couldn't have been overcome. It's nothing that couldn't have been overcome because Chelsea, AJ, what was their stat on winless games? Was it 6 games away from home or something? Or was it 8? They hadn't won.
I think they hadn't won a game away from home in 8, but they hadn't won a game in the last 6.
Yeah.
So
this wasn't a team with a huge amount of confidence, and our record against teams above us has been pretty good. But the fact of the matter is, 2 important games. The Bournemouth game we talked about, that was a non-entity. But the Chelsea game, I mean, I'm sorry, I find it very difficult to say that they beat us when I cannot get away from the fact that we gave it away because we didn't make the key changes at the key times. Now, I know we're going to go on to specifics. There's been a lot of anti-Tom Kearney sentiment out there. I love Tom. I think he's fabulous. I think he was the wrong substitution. A game that required hustle and energy and drive is not a Tom Kearney game. A Tom Kearney game is when you've got the ball, when people are sitting back, the point that AJ made a couple of weeks ago, you're looking at someone to pick a pass. That wasn't that game.
No.
And for me, when the changes did come, they were the wrong changes and they came about. Ash, what was the first change? I can't remember off the top of my head. I should know. About 65 minutes, was it?
It was a bit later than usual this week. Actually, this is what shocked me on Saturday. I think the first sub was actually the 72nd minute.
So I mean, 15 minutes.
Yeah, 72nd minute. Yeah.
15 minutes too late. 15 minutes too late. And then when the substitutions were made, they were the wrong substitutions. I mean, when you're getting outworked in midfield, yeah, I have a 2-word answer for that: Harrison Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Harrison Reed. Because say what you want about Harrison Reed, he never fails to show up, never fails to hustle, never fails to close down, never fails to spot danger. And yeah, I love Marco, but I'm sorry, his inability to spot the condition of his team, the pattern of the game, because it was clearly going away from us, and then to make the changes he made. I mean, to be fair, he came out and explained why he made the Kearney one. But as I've said, it wasn't a Kearney game. It was about hustle. It was about fight. And that's not... I love Tom. Yeah, but was he now 33, 34? Yeah, his game's
He's
never been
34.
about that.
Yeah, he's 34.
34. I mean, going back to when we had Jukanovic was quite open about it. You know what I mean? When he wanted to keep the ball, when he wanted to open teams out, just give the ball to Tom Kearney. He wasn't putting Tom Kearney in there to do the Kevin McDonald role. So yeah,
There's a reason that.
sorry,
go
AJ.
on.
No, I mean the final thing I was going to say, apart from getting the subs wrong, is that like I said, and this is a bigger theme, and Ash, I don't want to preempt what we're going to do in future shows, but I think Marco has coached the hell out of this team. I genuinely do. I think he's got as much as he can out of the players he's got, and I don't think he's the problem. I just think the upper limits of this squad are such that if we are serious about breaking into Europe, then we're going to need some major investment. I personally, after watching us in the second half of this season, I'm coming around to the point of view that I'm kind of glad that we might miss out on Europe, because I dread to think what sort of state our league campaign would be next year if we were fighting on FA Cup front, League Cup, European and League. I think that would be laying the groundwork for a relegation fight. But anyway, I'm not going to say any more for the moment.
Well, look, let's be honest, right? Anyone who watched Friday, for the first time ever, we did a live preview to the game with me and AJ, and we spoke briefly at the beginning of that episode where we spoke about players' contracts that are coming up and signings that we're going to have to make, and I think we covered an awful lot of certain positions that really showed to have an issue on Sunday. And we've been moaning for ages now that, and it is a moan because it is just a moan and we're allowed to moan as much as Fulham Twitter may not like it about certain things, and still absolutely love Marco, that he's understanding of when and where to make substitutions can be really frustrating at times. And I think Sunday really showed that. The Tom Kearney sub was wrong for many reasons why it was wrong. As you say, you don't just want someone who's going to come in when you need high energy. You want someone who can actually run quicker than most other players can walk. And I love Tom. If you want someone to control the ball and have the ball, he's superb at it. The problem is that 3 or 4 times after he came on, he lost the ball because he then became the focal point of an attack that he couldn't keep up with himself, let alone try and make. And it just really showed. The biggest problem for me on Sunday is what the problem was on Monday night. Whereas I don't know what happens at half time in our games, but it's like everyone stopped talking to each other. And I know there's that big moment at the end of the first half where we get a corner and then the ref blows up for half time after letting everybody line up for that corner, which is something that I've never ever seen before happen in a game. Then it happened, and that got to a few players. You could tell it could because of how angered they were when they went off for half time. But they came out in the second half like they were casual with what was going on. Chelsea looked like they had a boot up the arse. They'd made 2 substitutions and they came out high energy. And it took us 40 minutes to even match that energy with Chelsea in the second half. And by that time, they'd scored 2 goals. It's really frustrating to see. My biggest problem with Marco is that it has been for a little while, is that he doesn't see in games when it's starting to get away from us. There's a reason why Fulham have now lost 25 points from winning positions, and it's exactly that. It's at times when games are getting away from us, Marco doesn't recognise it until it's too late, or he'll make subs in games that are like for like, or change absolutely nothing, which then doesn't change our pattern of play, which is what we're desperate for. AJ, but I don't want to moan too much about it because I've said my piece on it, but there's a lot of frustration going into the subs that were made on Sunday. We know that obviously because of Muniz being injured, we had to play Carlos Vinicius, and he was that we had no option to. But what could we have done differently in terms of squad set up, substitutions made? What should we have done in that second half to correct what was clearly gone wrong that we just didn't do?
Well, we lost control of the ball and control of the tempo of the game, and I can understand the rationale between in bringing Kearney on to alter that and to try and retain the ball a bit more. But that only works if you don't take off the legs that are running around the midfield. if you bring in Kearney on to try and retain a bit more possession, you do so at the expense of Iwobi and you push Andreas out wide, or you take off Andreas and bring Iwobi into the midfield as well and try and pack that midfield to retain the ball. You don't take Lukic off, who will run relentlessly for 90 minutes for you, regardless of how many games he's played in a row. Then you've got the issue of all of the substitutions were again like for like, and he just trusted in his existing tactical strategy. There's no adjustment in the formation, the positions of players. There's no individual man marking to try and stop the retention of the ball. Gusto absolutely run us riot for 45 minutes in that second half. And he was free to do so the entire game, regardless of whether or not it was Iwobi or Sessegnon out on that left-hand side. Gusto did whatever hell he wanted to do with the ball. And most of the football came from him being able to wander forward and retain possession of the football. It's just remarkable that so much went wrong off of not actually doing anything. I can't sit here and blame Marco and say, oh, he changed the formation at halftime, he took off two of the wrong players and messed up the whole system, and the system collapsed on us. No, but I can blame Marco for not adapting to, again, another manager's tactical changes. It feels like we could honestly hand whatever substitutes that Marco normally makes to an assistant or one of the coaches, and have Marco not show up for game days, because there is no tactical input from him throughout the match, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, there's so much frustration like in a lot of the stuff that happened in the game, right? We have to, we're not even talking about the game here, which is we're talking about a game review, and I want to look at the bigger issue here, right? Because it's frustrating. Mozza, looking in at it, there's a clear mentality issue on the pitch at times, right? Again, we go back to the lost 25 points from winning positions this season. Yes, I know we've had a few games where we've been really unlucky, and teams that haven't been great have got equalizers last minute, etc., etc. You look at the Everton away game, you look at the West Ham home game and stuff like that. But there's a reason why it happens, and often it's because Marco doesn't see patterns of play where we're being broken down, right? The biggest fear is that hasn't been addressed all season. We're this many games in, it's still happening. How much of a concern is it to you that is just a case of the squad, or is it a thing that it doesn't matter what players we have on the pitch, that'll keep happening because it's the way that Marco plays football?
When you put it like that, it doesn't matter what players we have on the pitch. I think it does matter. We're talking about the squad thinning out, and has he taken this small squad as far as he can take it? I think it's very important when we've got the likes of the same names that we keep discussing week in, week out. Goddo, King, and at one point, Reece Nelson as well. Feel free to add in any of the other younger up and rising stars we have who are aching to prove their worth. So it shouldn't come down to the quality of the players. I think it's more down to lack of players and expanding the squads a bit more. With all that said, when you look at Silva, his attitude, his demeanour, to me, he comes across as someone quite stoic, quite stubborn, probably too much for his own goods. I've always said, tongue in cheek, you wouldn't want to disagree with him, but I wouldn't. Like at half time, I wouldn't want to be in the dressing room and him going absolutely bananas. But yes, why can't he read these games? Why is it a common thing, a consistent thing, that he always makes these subs too late? And when he makes the subs too late, we have games like we just had, last two, even Bournemouth and Chelsea, where they're not even the right subs, that is eyebrow raising. But for all the good he does, everything else about him, I can't really pick up anything else as much of a major concern. But who's going to have a word with him? What coaching staff has he got around him? We haven't got Mozza there anymore, but whether he was the man that would be having a word with him on the sides when he was in the club, I doubt it. So I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll never know. We do have a right to sort of know. But if he can't see his own faults after this season, and I think we might talk about saying goodbye to Europe. That's how I've been feeling. Somewhat, I'm still feeling optimistic. But if we don't get that Europe place, he will need to address what his faults are. No one else can do that for him.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I've got a real concern about if we make Europe, because I'm already worried about how we rebuild this squad in the summer, which is something we'll get onto and we'll speak about during the summer, considering the fact that we're potentially losing 6 players from the already tiny squad we have. How we then replace those 6 players and more to deal with Europe is going to be a genuine concern. My biggest worry is that there are certain players in our squad that are desperate for some downtime, and they can't get it because the quality of player behind them or maybe replacing them isn't good enough. You look at Alex Iwobi, who, bless him, has looked like he's needed a break since the middle of December, but he's probably one of the most versatile players we have on the pitch, and because of that, no one can replace him, so he has to play every single minute. You look at Anthony Robinson, who arguably is our only left back. I don't trust Cesc to play left back too much. He's not a left back in my opinion anyway. But you look at the last couple of games, especially Anthony Robinson has been full of errors in the last couple of games, and I know he's got this slight nick, he's got this slight injury, but he looks like he needs a rest. And I know he didn't go on the last US international break, but he hasn't exactly been setting the world alight in the 3 games we played since then. Or 4 games we played since then. You look at the game on Sunday, he's probably at fault for one of the Chelsea goals because he goes on some meandering run that starts off because he wins the ball and then tries to sort of break away a bit, has a bit of a tussle, wins the ball, and then tries to break away. But rather than making an easy pass, just sort of runs into trouble and loses the ball really easily. And that's it. Chelsea come down on the break and they score. But it's not the first time he's done that in the last couple of weeks. Again, I'm not going to bash him too much because he's a great left back. As much as I don't rate his crossing and his attacking ability that way, because he often just puts floaty passes in, I think he's another player he's running on dead, right? You look at Kenny Tete, who in the game on Sunday, he's coming back from a major injury and he's been thrown into the deep end because, Chelsea have got a lot of quality on that. They're a £2 billion squad. People have to remember that, right? There's a lot of quality in that team. And my concern is just that, we were really unlucky on Sunday in the sense of we found out obviously that Muniz had been injured. And because of that, probably Raul played 20 minutes longer than he probably planned on playing. Carlos Vinicius came on, and we understand why he's not made a squad all season because of it, because he did nothing other than run into the goalkeeper one time. Harry Wilson coming back from injury, as much as he changed a little bit of the game because he had high energy, which is what we were desperate for, the ball wasn't going out to him out wide. And the one time he did, he'd been on the pitch for 30 seconds and he got completely cleared out by Marc Cucurella. Like, the frustration is that Marco wants this small squad, which is fine. That's what he's used to working with. But Sunday is a culmination of all of the problems that a small squad brings. Energy levels are sapped. Players haven't got the energy. They're dead now. We're now at the business end of the season. And when you want players to go dig in and, show a bit of fight and a bit of energy, most of them are too dead to do it. They go into that mode of playing their position and doing it that way. Can't really moan too much about certain players because of it, because the workload they've been given has been way too high, and this is one of the things that falls on Marco. And this is where you have to say that he has to sort of live and die by the sword a bit, and he has to take responsibility. And if you listen to his comments after the game on Sunday, he does a little bit, he did a little bit sort of take responsibility in the sense of he acknowledged that the substitutions were wrong and that the energy levels were a bit low. But, it's a real concern if we do somehow manage to make Europe this year, what we do to repair this squad going into next season. And it's got to be a concern. Drew, before we sort of talk about a man the match and look forward to next week, have you got anything else you want to add about sort of the game and Marco and the whole situation at the moment, about what we can do to sort of reset and potentially have a positive end to this season?
Just a couple of things. Got to disagree with AJ about Marco not turning up for game day. I know AJ was being glib, but I think that would be a bit extreme.
Well, I mean, what does he offer from the touchline other than yelling at players?
Yeah, but they buy into him. To take him away, I think would be counter. It would do more harm than good. And let's be honest. I don't want to think about Fulham without Marco Silva.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying remove him entirely. That's no.
I know what you're getting. The question you asked AJ, I thought was quite interesting about leadership versus, structure. I don't think there's a lack of leadership there. I mean, you've got some very seasoned pros. I mean, Raul, knows his way around the football field. Anderson knows his way around the football field. Leno knows his way around the football field. I mean, Robinson's 28 now, but I think Mozza hit the nail on the head. We are now at the back end of the season, and we've dropped more points than anyone, I think, bar one team, it might be, from winning positions. Now, that's now a recurrent theme. And ultimately, I think it's got to, majority of it's got to fall at Marco's feet. It was interesting, Ash, the point you made about his post-match comments, where he acknowledged the mistake with the Kearney substitution and the fact that there was fatigue, because he doesn't usually do that. And I do wonder if he's probably a lot more sensitive than we anticipate, because he has to know that for us to have dropped so many points from winning positions, for us to have games where it's been taken away from us because we haven't adjusted, he must see that like we do. But acknowledging it, I think, is something that's going to be very difficult for him, because he's a very proud man. But in order to get to the next level, the squad, I maintain that he's coached his squad as far as he can, And Ash, I fully accept the points you make about the players we're going to lose, but I'm thinking in terms of to replace those players. You're talking about basically standing still where we are now. We want to get to the next level. We're going to need a different type of player, but also Marco's going to need to reevaluate things as well, because you can't go through a season and having dropped as many points from winning positions as we have and just blame the players. Not when you've got so many experienced pros in the team. I just don't think you can do it. So it's going to be a very interesting off season. But that's all I really wanted to say.
No, it's a fair point. It's why I made it. I think that we spoke about this briefly on Friday, me and AJ, and AJ will probably have something to say about it more when next time we speak about it, because he made some very valid points about certain members of the squad and stuff. So if you haven't watched Friday's preview of the game, as much as you don't want to watch the preview, the first 15-20 minutes to show is us just talking about some of the news that was coming up. But this is some of the things we're talking about. You worry about the squad in the sense of there's a massive rebuild coming this summer. No matter what happens at the end of the season now, there's a massive rebuild coming this summer. And if we got any chance of improving again next season like we did this season, there's going to have to be a hell of a lot of ambition shown in the transfer window because of that. Because we're not just going to need players to wipe our face. We're going to need players that are steps up. And in order for that to happen, Fulham are going to have to be ambitious. And, it's hard to get players in on when you're being ambitious, when all they have to do is look at our last two seasons under Marco Silva, look at the last 3 months of every single season and go, what's going on there? Because you cannot be as good as you are for the first 3/4 of a season and then completely go to pot. Unlike last season, where it felt like we were just on the beach, and that the way the players were speaking, the way the Marco was speaking, you weren't always 100% sure that Europe was even the ambition. Maybe it was just Premier League survival.
To be
This
fair, Ash, that was
season,
the hangover of the Mitrovic departure, wasn't it?
yeah, 100%. Whereas this season, the ambition has always been Europe, and it's been clear it's been Europe by the way they speak and the way the Marco speaks. So, do we look at not making Europe as a failure? Yes and no. Do we have to look at, if we're going to take another step up, this squad's going to have to improve? Clearly, the frustrations of the game yesterday are massively high. We haven't even spoke about the game that much because I don't want to talk about the game that much, because my frustrations aren't even things that happened in the game or what happened during the game. It's the culmination of issues we've all been highlighting for months, and it just happened to be that for the first time in a while, it wasn't just, oh, we can pinpoint a mistake being just substitutions. The mentality is a real issue, and you know I've never seen a team lose so many points in winning positions when 80% of those games, it isn't because they're trying to retake the lead in the game. Chelsea equalised yesterday. We still didn't offer anything going forward, yet we still looked like we were a swinging gate at the back. And it was a real concern. And that's where the mentality comes in. And that's when you have to look at it and go, if it isn't the players, it's the management and the way they're set up. And I don't think we can blame an awful lot of the players for the way they were set up yesterday. 100% we cannot blame the players for their work ethic yesterday, because even players like Andreas Pereira put a hell of a shift in during that game yesterday. I was so impressed with the effort he put in. Just the output of some of the things he does are just mental. I've never known a player who can't beat the front post from a corner and can't hit the target from a free kick, get every single corner and every single free kick a squad has. Like that's one of the things where you need a manager to go, wait a minute, I've seen you take 150 corners for Fulham now, and we scored from 2, and you haven't beaten the first man from 90 of them. There's a problem there. Change it up. Like, we scored from 6 set pieces this season. 3 of those were Lukic corners. Like, when AP was out, it says an awful lot, and it's a real concern. Look, lads, I don't want to moan too much more about this. We'll get into it. We'll get into the bigger issues that are going on with Fulham about squad wise in the next couple of weeks, because it's going to be a natural part of conversation. I don't really want to pick a man of the match from yesterday's game, because I don't particularly think there was one from my point of view. But if any of you have anyone you want to vote man of the match, if anyone watching this has someone they want to vote man of the match, interact with the show, like, comment, let us know who you think player of the match was. I think an awful lot went wrong in the game yesterday. Maybe it's because we lost against Chelsea, that it's one of those things that we had the opportunity to do a league double over them for the first time in our history, and we completely wet the bed. Maybe it's because it's not the first time in the last couple of weeks we've had to have a conversation after a game where we're going, what do we do there? How have we managed to almost beat ourselves in a game where the opposition, as good as they are, haven't really offered that much, haven't really changed that much, but the way they did change, we just completely were void of any idea on how to beat it. It was really, really frustrating. Before we leave, guys, any of you have anything you want to add about the game, or how we sort of move forward from this? Because I think there's a big couple of weeks coming up, not just in terms of games, but how we reset and come out, maybe just a bit more positive than we are right now.
It's interesting your point about Europe, Ash. Whether we fail to achieve our goal, I'm starting to wonder if we don't make it, whether it's a blessing in disguise. And you've highlighted the importance of the off season. What I would like to see, and I know that this isn't going to happen, and this is just me as an individual Fulham fan, I don't speak, for anyone else. I'd like us to blood some youngsters, just to increase the energy levels, if for nothing else, and put us in a better stand for next season. Because realistically, we're not going to be able to go out and spend 200 million that we need to make a European challenge. So we need to be having serious conversations about Luke Harris. We need to be having serious conversations about Marshall Goddo. We need to have serious conversations about Figueroa. I would like. They won't do it because mathematically Europe's still on the table, But I'd definitely like to see. I mean, Harris, obviously you can't, but you get the point I'm making. I'd definitely like to see more reliance on the youngsters because, as you've quite rightly said, and we've all agreed, our senior pros, Iwobi being the prime example, they're running on fumes, and it gets to a point where it's just not fair. Not fair on them. It's not fair on the team. It's not fair on the fans. But that's not going to happen. But you asking me what I'd like to see? That would be it.
Yeah, let's leave this one here, lads. You know, I know it's really hard to pinpoint a load of stuff that's gone wrong. We'll be back obviously later on in the week to share our thoughts on the upcoming game against Southampton on the weekend. It's a big game this for us. I know Southampton already relegated; they might play with some freedom, but if we're going to right some wrongs from the last couple of games, it's going to have to be this one. And you know, we don't 100% know where the squad lie injury wise from Muniz and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. I want to thank everyone who's obviously come and joined us over on YouTube and subscribed to the channel. We reached 100 subscribers on Friday, which was really, really positive. Because of that, you know, we put in a couple of things in place. We've already decided when we reach 500 subscribers, we're going to give away a bundle from our merch store worth about £80. All you have to do to win that is subscribe to the channel, and then when we reach 500, we will then do a prize draw of everyone who's subscribed on the next episode that we do. AJ has also very kindly offered one of his signed Fulham shirts, which I think is a couple of years old now, for when we reach 1,000 subscribers. I think the reason why he's disappeared from the screen as we speak is because he's currently digging for it to show everyone. So please do come and subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we really like it when you guys interact. The show on Friday was really nice. We had about 20 people in while we were at one point while we were live and on the show. It would have been, we'd really like to do some more of those, but obviously that involves interaction and chatting. So the more you guys chat with us, the more we will chat with you. Obviously, if there's any issues that are currently going on at the club that you want to talk about, let us know. We'll comment on them. Obviously, we're not just here to do reviews and previews of games. We're here to talk everything Fulham. So get involved. Other than that, there's not really much more to say other than thank you for coming to watch us this one. I know it's not been positive. I know it's not been great. Have a good week, and we'll see you on Friday. Other than that, come on, you whites.